Okay, so we're continuing our shiurim, where you see Unit 8 in front of you, right? Page 13 of Unit 8. Is that what you see on the screen? Okay, just making sure that there's no trouble with that. We're continuing Unit 8 of the Moreno Shiurim for the Menucha of Sir Naim Dangur and Sir Moses Montefiore. We are in the middle of asking the question of why are you not allowed to make silan out of dates on truma dates, right? Why can't you make cider? So you might ask, why do I care about whether you can make cider or not? So when it comes to truma, because we don't have enough mishnayot to tell us exactly what are you allowed, what are you not allowed to do with Shmita fruit. So the question is, what are you allowed to do with the Shmita fruit, and what are you not allowed to do? A lot of that is derived from the halachot of truma. So that's the example here, that you can't make tmarim dvash, you can't make silan, you can't make apple cider. And the question is, why not? So we saw two reasons. The first reason is that you have to use it for the prevalent use. And the question is, what is prevalent use? And we discussed that to a certain extent. We also mentioned the issue that not all of the fruit is necessarily used properly, right? The dates, some of it gets thrown out when you what do you call it? The silan. And that's not created for the word.
Liquid. Paste.
Sorry?
It's a paste or a liquid.
Yeah. So you extract the silan, you end up with a bunch of the fruit that you end up throwing out. And now we're going to go into another interesting reason. The Rambam in Hilchot Trumot, Mishnah Trumot. Mishnah Trumot says like this: Tmarim ochel v'advash mashke. V'asur lo la'asot ha'ochel mashke. והיה אותו אוכל של תרומה או של מעשר שני, חוץ מענבים וזיתים. שנאמר בהם כל חלב, דגן, תירוש ויצהר. תירוש הוא היין, יצהר הוא השמן. הוא קרא השם ראשית, כמו שקראת ביקורים ראשית, וחייב בהם תרומה. וחייב בהם תרומה. So the Rambam is saying like this: there's a more fundamental problem, which is you're not allowed to change the fruit that has a certain kind of kedusha into something else. You're not allowed to extract the liquids because the liquids are not the fruit. So it's a more fundamental problem. It's not that it's a waste, and it's not that it's not as efficient, and it's not any of that. It's something more fundamental, which is this is something of truma. I need to respect the truma for itself, unto itself. Extracting something else from it loses the kedusha of the truma that was inherent in the original fruit. And that's a problem unto itself. There's nothing to do with waste or prevalence or any of those things. So it's a more fundamental problem. That's what Rav Zilber explains, that this would apply to Shmita as well. אסור לשחוט תפוחי עץ כדי לשתות המיץ, וכן אסור לעשות מהתמרים שיכר ודבש, זהה בעלמא הוא, ואינו מברך אלא שהכל. לפיכך חשוב כמפסידה. So once you turn the apple into apple juice, you stop making bar pri'etz, and at that point you're going to start making shehakol ni'abivara. Once you're saying shehakol on it and not bar pri'etz, you've lost the essence of the fruit. See what he says over here? Ikar ta'am לא לפי שמשנה אותן מבריאתן, אלא לפי ששאר המשכין הווי זהה ואינם כגוף הפרי. ואינו חל עליהם שם תרומה ממש. שהמשקה מכל שאר הפירות הווה כזהה, לפיכך הם מברכים רק שהכל. So it's not the truma. So I have an apple that's truma. I extract apple juice from the apple, or I extract cider from the apple. I no longer say bura pri'etz, which means it's no longer the apple. So this is a very interesting point. It's not waste in terms of the content. Before we were saying when you make orange juice, right, you waste a lot of the orange, right, many times. You'll waste a lot of the orange. When you extract, many things, so you're wasting a lot of the original fruit. The problem here is not that you're wasting the fruit. The problem is it seems to be a more basic thing. It's not the matter of the waste. It's a matter of that it's not the fruit. I wasted the kedusha of the fruit. I wasted the essence of the fruit. The fruit is essentially truma. It's a fruit that is truma. Now it's a shehakol, so it's not a fruit. Therefore, it's no longer truma. And that's the waste. The waste is the waste of the kedusha.
How are grapes different then?
So grapes are a special gzerat hakatuv, right? Grapes, the kol chelev dagan tirosh veitzar gzerat hakatuv. The fact, that's what the Rambam says here. The fact that the Torah refers to tirosh and yitzhar as things have bikurim, that means that they are the essence, that they are still essentially the fruit. But in a chinami, it's only something that's unique by wine and olive oil. But otherwise, the fruit. Otherwise, all other fruit. Just trying to find a good angle here. Otherwise, all other fruit really has to remain the fruit itself. Otherwise, it's just not bikurim. Otherwise, it's not the fruit. Not because it's wasting anything, just because that's not the fruit. The fruit is an apple, not cider, not apple juice.
So, according to the people who say that juices you make borei pri ha'etz on, they would not agree with this.
Oh, very good. So this would affect. We mentioned in the past. Let me just remind us. The Chazon Ish here says that kol perot zulat zeitim v'anavim einam odim l'schita. Right? He wants to compare Hilchot Shabbat, where we have the halachot of Sochet by Shabbat, and the halachot of Shmita, and he says that when you have that, when the Gemara says that only grapes and olives are the only things that crushing them, extracting the fruit from them, is schita doraita. Is that because it's not prevalent enough, or because it's not is a matter of not common enough use? Or is it something more fundamental? So the Rambam here sounds like it's something more fundamental. You are right. There could be a difference between the Rambam and the other Rishonim. The Chazon Ish there brings the Rashba and the Tosfot. Discuss that. I'm not going to go deeply into that right now. But I will say that what you did saying is correct in the sense that the definition of Zilber says. He says here, I'll give you an example. The fact that you say shahakol on it, right? So truly, if you say that now, those who hold that Tropicana orange juice, you say borei pri ha'etz, right? That would mean that would imply that this orange is essentially created for that purpose. In which case, it's not only, again, it's important for me to just point out these are we're saying three different things, right? It's important to note the difference between them. First one is a question of prevalence of use, right? How common is it to use the oranges for orange juice? How common is it to use the apples for apple cider? How common is it to extract sila, not just eat the dates? One kind of question, right? Another kind of question of waste of the fruit. The third kind of question of changing the fruit, and therefore it's not essentially, it loses the essence of the original fruit. Now, it could be that it's prevalent enough to justify using on Shmita, but not prevalent enough to say that is still maintains the original essence of the fruit, right? If you'll argue that we'll say borei pri ha'etz for Tropicana orange juice, right? Or for example, a better example, there's a whole shita that says that you say borei pri ha'etz on chocolate, right? Because clearly cocoa is made. Cocoa is definitely created to give us chocolate. It's no question, right? Maybe in the snow here, it's more hot cocoa is more of a thing, but right, clearly that's the essence. That's the essence of the cocoa. So those who say that you should be saying borei pri ha'etz on cocoa, and I also saw some who said that on coffee. Right, coffee I think would be hadama, right? But there is such a shita that coffee was also made for the drink, and therefore the drink you should say that bracha for. Wait. Sorry, just a sec. So the point here is that I have fruit that's fundamentally supposed to be that I have fruit that's truma, and that the fruit has to remain the fruit that is for the truma. It's not only a matter. So now the Rambam limits that to only grapes and and olives, and says only those were originally created for this new thing. But as you did point it out, the Rashba and the Tosfot discuss other options, maybe other fruit as well. How far would that go? That's a whole discussion in Hilchot Brachot. But in the context of Hilchot Brachot, but the Rav Zilber does that. Rav Zilber again, is this a siman or a siba? In other words, is this truly the definition? The definition is only if it maintains the bar prihaetz l'chora. L'chora, you're right. That's what the Rav Zilber says. Rambam seems to say that no other fruit is true to say. Is this true? So yeah, this was a bit confusing, right?
Right.
If it was a bit confusing, I just want to sum this up. The Rambam says it's true about olives and grapes, and that's it. Rav Zilber says we need to define: is this the essence of the fruit? And the essence of the fruit could be measured by still say bar prihaetz, in which case you could say those who hold that by coffee, by chocolate, by Tropicana orange juice, and specific fruits that are made out of fruit that's for that specific use. So that would be the context there. And then Rav Zilber says, applies this to Shmita as well, right? Rav Shlomo Zalman disagrees. And the fundamental idea in Rav Shlomo Zalman is that the question is, we started this unit with the question of, are you supposed to say, is there a mitzvah to eat the Shmita fruit? Now, Truma, there's definitely a mitzvah to eat. So think about it. If I have apples that are Truma apples, so there's a mitzvah to eat the Truma apples. The Kohen has a mitzvah to eat the Truma apples. Now, instead he turns it into apple cider. Now he's not going to say Bor Priyat, he's going to say Shakol. Says the Rambam, says Rav Zilber. If you're going to say Shakol on the cider, that means you're not eating the original fruits. You're not doing the mitzvah of eating the Truma, and that's a waste. Not a waste in terms of the content of the apple, but a waste in terms of the truma. Because you had truma, now instead of eating truma, you're having cider that's not truma. That's something else. It's not bar prihaetz, for example, right? That would be his litmus test. Rav Shlomo Zalman says that's all very well when it comes to truma, but who said there's such a thing by Shmita? It's one thing to say when you ask, am I allowed to waste Shmita fruit? So you say, okay, define waste. So definitions will come from the world of Truma. We're going to go much deeper into that in Unit 10. But the definitions will come from the world of Truma. Fair enough. But here we're talking about something else. Here we're talking about there's a mitzvah to eat the Truma. And when you turn it into juice, it's no longer Truma. So it's no longer the truma. When it comes to Shmita, it's no longer the Shmita. So what? Who said that you need to eat davka, the Shmita fruit? Now that could be dependent on whether you think there's a mitzvah to eat the Shmita fruit, right? If you think there's a real mitzvah to eat the Shmita fruit, that could be a problem. That's what the Garshaz says over here. Says Shlomo Zalman. Sorry. לכן כתב שם, דלבד מזה שהוא עובר אין מבטלים איסור לכתחילה, עובר נם יעשה ושמרתו נשמר תרומותיי. So, ושמרתו נשמר תרומותיי, there's an inyan to dafki the truma fruit. If you eat the truma fruit, that and if you're wasting the truma fruit, not only is it waste, it's also you're mevatel the mitzvah, because there's a mitzvah to eat the truma fruit. He wants to say the same could apply to Shmita fruit, just like Rav Zilber says. Omnam shvit lo kabdin el hefsed, lo hafkat kedusha. כמו שהדבר נראה, דעיקר איסור הפסד לא מחמת קדושה, אלא מסתעף רק מן ההפקר. כיוון דהפקר הוא דכזכי, לכן לא זיקתה לא בהן התורה, אלא לאכילה ולא להפסד. אבל לא מציין בשום מקום שחייבתו תורה לאוכלן דווקא בקדושה. מה שאין כן אכילת תרומה, וכעבודת בית המקדש דם, מוזרים שפיר לשמור גם בקדושתם. I want to remind us, part of the way we were discussing the question of why are you not allowed to waste the Shemitah fruit? Are you not allowed to waste the Shemitah fruit because it's holy, or are you not allowed to waste the Shemitah fruit because everyone's together? Right? The Kiddush or the Kedusha. Right, Dr. Berlitz? Right? There's the communal Kiddush. Can I go start wasting everyone's food? Or is this a matter of there's inherent Kedusha in the fruit, and therefore you're not, and that is something that you're not allowed to waste? Now, if I say the issue is the inherent Kedusha in the fruit, So you'll say there's a mitzvah to eat that, and then if I turn it into apple cider or whatever, then I'm no longer getting the pleasure from the fruit itself, right? I no longer have the essence of the fruit. But who said there's anything wrong with that? If it's a matter of stealing from the communal kiddush, sorry, I'll take a step back. I confuse myself. If the issue is not to, why are you not allowed to waste Shmita fruit? So you can say that you're not to waste Shmita fruit because everyone's. Right, now I'm not wasting, I'm turning it into apple cider. Okay, so now I say shakol, not ha'etz. Fair enough. But even after I'm not going to say shakol, I'll say ha'etz. Not say ha'etz, I'll say shakol, sorry. I still haven't wasted anything. But if I say the issue is the kedusha, I need to eat these fruit b'kedusha. That's only if it remains the original fruit. Rav Shlomo Zalman here seems to assume there's no problem with that. Again, it's probably because, as I said, there's a mitzvah to eat truma. According to most Rishonim and Achronim, and the way most Achronim explain the Rishonim, there's no mitzvah to eat the Shemitah fruit either. So there's nothing wrong with wasting the kedusha of the Shemitah fruit. Nothing wrong with that. That's basically what he's saying. So what I was saying based on this, right, that next to this Rambam that says the issue that I just brought this Rambam again, connecting us back to the Kiddush, right, the communal Kiddush model, and not as opposed to the Kedusha model. And then Shlomo Zalman and Zab, מילא מותר שפיר זה לסחוט תפוז ולימון ואשכוליות של שביעית כדי ליהנות מהמשקים יוצאים מהם, לזה לא לאבד בידיים מה שנשאר בפרי. Right, again, you're not allowed to waste any. You're allowed to extract whatever you want to extract as long as you don't waste the original fruit. This would not be true about truma, because truma you need to not extract, you need to eat the truma. Says there could be a problem. Why? Because when I end up squeezing that orange, and now I have pulp, so I have the juice that's good, and I have the pulp behind. No one's going to eat the pulp. On the other hand, that is part of the fruit. So is that a problem? Good question. He's not so sure, because it might be that might be considered wasting, but that might be considered wasting. But the mere fact that I'm changing it into something else should not be considered wasting.
B'Tzalel, a question.
Yes.
The fact that you're changing the nutrients from one as a solid product, as a fruit,
right,
to liquid, you do change something else too. The fact that they are discussing about the remainder.
Right.
So is this anywhere in the...
Correct. When it comes to truma, that's a problem because it's no longer recognizable as the fruit, right?
But also when you eat the same apple, or you drink the liquid that became the juice that became from it,
okay,
are you going to be the same satisfied as you ate the apple?
That's
I believe the fact that there is a change in bracha from borei pri ha'etz to shehakol is related also to this.
So that may be that is a good question. That may be. They say in dieting, right? They say eat fruit, don't drink fruit juice, right? Because you don't feel that you're drinking the fruit juice. You get many more calories without noticing when you drink. You're a lot more satisfied than you actually chew. It's an interesting point.
Look, the halakha, the rabbis, whoever instigated the change of the bracha,
right,
of a liquid, obviously saw that. Obviously, they paid attention to it. It's not just happened. The fact that they did it, there is the reason why they went from one bracha to a different bracha. I'm not talking about wine and oil, but I'm talking about other stuff. Obviously, there is a reason. So maybe that's, I don't know.
So that's okay. So I think what you're saying is actually the Chazon Ish. I want to take a step back and connect what you were saying, because we've learned in the past. Last week we talked about the prevalence, right? What is a prevalent use, right? That's one issue, right? That's one kind of issue. There's another issue, right? That's one kind of issue. Another kind of issue is the question of wasting the pulp, etc. And here we're talking about a third issue of losing the essence of the fruit itself. The question is, if I lose the essence of the fruit, but it's still proper use of the fruit, is that a problem, right? So Shlomo Zalman says it's not a problem. Why? Because that's still proper use of the fruit. So if I make grapefruit juice, right, that is a proper use of the fruit, even though I'll say shehakol, right? Now the pulp is another question, as right, we'll agree. The pulp is another question. What about the fruit? What about is this considered an efficient use of the fruit? And the answer is yes, it's efficient use, but it would lose the essence of the fruit. So says Rav Zilber, that's a problem because you need to eat the prot shvit b'kedusha, the mitzvah of eating prot shvit. So Shlomo says most Rishonim don't say there's a mitzvah to eat prot shvit. So there's nothing. So there's no problem with not using it for that. I think the Chazon Ish is saying something close to what you were saying, to what Chaim was saying. So the Chazon Ish, miu ledat tosot v'arosh mashma dafi uban sochtin chashiv ze'ah. כן אסור לסוחטן אפילו אם תמצא לומר דשביעית לא פקע מהם. מכל מקום חשיב משנה מבריאתו. אגב דאוכלי אדם מותרים בצביעה אתה מבאר את בהנעת צביעה, אבל אחר בשעת סחיטה מפסיד הפרי. He's talking about something more essential. I think this is not exactly Rav Zilber. I think it's something slightly different. He's not talking about the loss of kedusha. He's saying the loss of the fruit. It's no longer fruit, right? And then he says that this would really depend on different things. For example, there's a difference between apple juice and orange juice. What's the difference between apple juice and orange juice? Both extracted from the original fruit.
But orange juice, part of its value is the pulp.
Okay. As opposed to apple juice?
Which is clarified. Apple juice is clarified. So for example, apple cider, not the alcoholic cider, but apple cider has particles in it, whereas apple juice does not.
Right. In other words, there's one thing which is, I'd say, right, there's many of us have seen, where we're all familiar with the juicers, with the juicing world, right? You take the actual vegetables, the actual fruit, the actual whatever it is, berries, I don't know what, and you put them through a machine, and you put them through a machine. You crush them, and now they turn into fruit. And now they turn into fruit. So that is utilizing the fruit itself, the fruit, the vegetable, whatever it is. You use a lot of the berry, whatever it is. You're drinking that not as a fruit, but you're drinking that as a liquid. But that's as opposed to when you extract something, not because you're wasting the rest. The Chazon Ish is saying there are three separate things, right? There's one question of prevalent use. There's another question of wasting. Chazon Ish says that there's a third problem. When you're extracting something, it's not just a matter of wasting the rest. It's a deeper problem. It means I've extracted, it's no longer the relationship between the original fruit and what I've extracted from it isn't tight enough. It's not connected enough, not close enough. This is halfway to Rav Zilber, but not all the way. Because the nafkamina would be if I crush the orange wholesale, right? Or all these things. He wants to differentiate between extracting a certain part of the fruit, which would be a problem, as opposed to crushing the fruit. You're allowed to crush the fruit. Rav Zilber would say that's a problem, right? Rav Zilber would say you crush the fruit, it's no longer the fruit. You say shakol. Unless, as you did point it out, sometimes you do say, there are those who say, hey, you still say hey, it's in certain situations. Setting that aside, what the Chazon Ish is saying is, when you extract something, it's no longer the original thing, it's no longer the original fruit. So if we had at one point we asked about the whiskey. I think whiskey is made like this, right? Definitely vodka, right? What is made out of the fumes of? We discussed this. How about coffee? What do you call it, coffee? Not the instant coffee. Instant coffee is the same idea, right?
It's brewed.
Right. So I have what happens there is that I don't have the original fruit at all. I just have the fumes from it, right? Anything like that. Chazon Ish says anything like that, I'm no longer using the fruit at all. And the problem, again, unlike Rav Zilber's issue was that you're wasting the Kedusha. Chazon Ish says it's just not there isn't a tangible enough connection, relationship between the original fruit and what you're actually eating at the end. So I think we see three positions here. So I want to show. We have Rav Zilber, who talks about the waste of the Kedusha. It's no longer a Pri Ha'etz, meaning it's not the fruit. So it's no longer the Shmita fruit. So it's not, I'm losing that mitzvah. Chazon Ish said it's not a matter of losing the mitzvah, it's just a matter that you don't have enough relationship between the original fruit you had and what you have at the end. And Rav Shlomo Zalman says neither thing is right, neither thing is relevant, because what I care about is, are you utilizing the fruit well? And if you're utilizing the fruit well, I don't really care if it is the fruit, it isn't the fruit. That's not really very important.